Hi, all. Welcome back. It's good to be back. So this is part two of our discussion of the movie Hellzapoppin, and we will also be discussing an episode of Super Friends, The Krypton Syndrome, which we haven't done in a little while. So sit back, and here we go with part two of Hellzapoppin. But Hellzapoppin, how do you feel the whole breaking the fourth wall thing, or was it effective, or is that even a question? Because that was the movie.
I mean, I was still laughing.
Yeah,
I thought it was one of the first great uses of intentionally terrible special effects. There's a gag towards the end of the film when, Martha Raye. Yeah, Martha Raye. She's trying to do the ballet.
Martha Raye's the funny one.
Martha Raye is hilarious in this movie. And she accidentally gets tossed off the stage, and it's so incredibly fake, just her going into the audience. And they know that it looks like crap. And so they bring out a guy in a Frankenstein costume, and they repeat the gag with him throwing her back onto the stage with the same level of practical special. And I'm a sucker for terrible practical special effects. I could watch that, Shark Attack 3 stuff. I could watch that all day.
Yeah, they and there's no the Frankenstein showing up is just sort of out of the blue. There's no reason for him to be there.
Right.
Nothing to do with the story. Nothing to do with the location. They're just like, oh, I know. Let's have Frankenstein do this.
Well, you kind of get the sense that they got hired to make this movie. The studio said, if we don't have to pay for it, you can do whatever you want, but we're not going to give you much money. Well, the end sequence with the big production and the audience and everything, that was probably pretty expensive to produce. But the rest of the movie, well, maybe the opening sequence where they're in hell and there's everybody's in a devil outfit and everything was probably relatively expensive to produce. The rest of it, though, you get the sense where they're like, all right, anything in the prop department, any of the sets we're not using, have at it.
Yeah.
And they go to town on it.
Yeah, that was pretty minimalist set. There's
except there's that one gag where it's literally just them walking through these generic studio sets one after another, and their costumes change randomly as they go, or not randomly, but to match the background.
And even then, it's right. So part of it was the movies were playing in the background. There's the whole cowboys and Indians scene. But the others, I mean, it's possible that they went to other sound stages of shows that were movies that were currently being filmed. I don't know if they. Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Well, because the studio system was everything was produced. It was kind of. Movie production at that point in time, there's no such thing. The closest thing you get to an independent film, just because of the exorbitant cost of making a film, is United Artists. I'm not going to call a Charlie Chaplin movie an independent film. I'm sorry, I just won't. But
even after he takes over his own...
Well, that's what United Artists was him and a couple other guys starting a studio, but there's still, we're talking about some of the richest, most famous people. I love Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin's a great artist, but it's not the spirit of what we would consider to be, quote-unquote, independent film at this point. So... Yeah, if you watch enough of these old movies, and my friend Mark Rappaport wrote some great essays for a couple film journals where he tracks these different props as they get reused in 10 or 15 movies. And you start noticing all those Technicolor movies in the 50s, which is the kind of close to the end of it's after the peak of the studio period. There's some kind of production being done outside of studios at that point, but they still got kind of a stranglehold on everything. And you start noticing, oh wait, that person's walking in the same exact room that I just saw in the last thing. You watch Turner Classic Movies all day, and you kind of notice, these rooms start feeling the same, or I feel like I saw that generic painting or statue in another movie, and you did, because they would reuse that stuff until it fell apart, and then they tape it back together.
So, and you still see the bit of tape on the next movie. Or the paint's slightly different because they had to repaint that one part that broke. They put in a replacement piece of wood, but it doesn't quite match. Slightly different style. I'm sorry, just remembering suddenly just some of the jokes. You reminded me with the painting, and there's somebody holding a camera that says, "Can I take your picture?" So, what can I take your picture? Yeah. So he walks over to the wall and takes the painting off the wall. And
I
it
mean,
just
they
reminds
even
me-
have a scene where they're in a prop department just so they can like pile all the props they wanted to use but couldn't come up with any logical reason
so
to
they
use in the movie.
But yeah, this is I don't know. It's reminding me of Zucker Abrams, Zucker the airplane and all of that, and saying, "Don't call me Shirley."
Right.
Yeah,
it has that
squad,
like
police
Zucker
squad.
Abrams. Zucker, before I mean, those guys went off the deep end a couple of years, or not. I think Abrams left at some point, and it was just the Zuckers, but then they became like these hardcore neoconservatives and tried to make like the Fox News version of Airplane, but they got beat to it by Osama bin Laden too soon.
God.
Wow.
They did make one of them did make a very right wing parody film, sort of an airplane style film, which wasn't very funny, not just because of the specific topics, but there was the portrayal of Arabs especially, but of other people. It doesn't hide. It's not like we're poking fun at everyone. It's specifically we're poking fun at liberals and non-Americans.
Right. It's like when Fox News had their own version of the Daily Show for like a hot second.
Oh, really? Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was. If you Google like Fox News Daily Show ripoff, you can find some clips of it, and it was so bad. It was because the thing is, like, you can't. If you're constantly just punching down, nobody finds it funny. You're just being an asshole.
Right. Yeah, it's all about punching up. Occasionally, you could do
or absurdism,
or
punch sideways. Like I feel like this movie didn't punch up or down; it was sort of flailing, but it was still really funny. And it
wasn't punching anyone.
And I guess that was the point I was trying to make about the Lindy Hop scene, is that like it was less offensive. Or not, I didn't find it offensive in this really at all. But the reason it wasn't offensive is because this fourth wall lampshade hanging structure of the film allows it to just show up with no context. We just see them and we're like, damn, these people can dance, and then it moves to the next thing.
Right. We're just going to suddenly have another dance number, because that's just what you do in reviews, right? So, and this is about a review, and even though that doesn't take place as part of the review, we're just going to have it anyways, because these are some great dancers, and we got to showcase them. Oh, I was going to say something about the way they have all the African Americans in one scene and not in any other scenes. Wasn't there also a whole thing about, okay, this is third-hand information, so please let me know if this is true. But movies playing in the South, that they would actually edit and cut out the scenes with the black people in them. And so
that sounds very believable, because like, I mean, I don't know if that's for a fact, if that's true. I never researched it, but like up until like I think 1940, the studio heads said you can't explicitly say anything negative about Nazis because we're going to lose European distribution.
Wow.
Like, and that's like on paper. Okay. There's a great book that came out about it like a couple of years ago. I'll have to find the name of that and tell you all next episode.
Although then we get like Step and Fetch It. And what years was he big in?
30s.
30s. So but so were those movies not distributed in the South, or did things change at some point?
Well, I think it was more exciting because it was sort of. I mean, this is something that I think somebody who did a lot of academic research into this should probably talk about, because I'm completely speculating here. In the South, like, I don't feel like they would have gotten upset if the person was seen or was portrayed by the movie as being essentially this, like, menial servant, right? Because that reminds them of the golden age before they were forced out of, like, slave-based feudalism into industrial capitalism by the war.
I'm trying to remember. The reason I thought about all that is that there was a movie by somebody famous, a white person, who insisted on a black performer being on stage with him. It was, I think, and I'm thinking of Eddie Cantor, but I'm not sure if that's true, because Eddie Cantor also did blackface, but that didn't necessarily mean.
Well, blackface wasn't necessarily so. Like, there's you ever see Swing Time with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers?
Yeah. And
there's this like 10-minute super surreal looking sequence where it's entirely Fred Astaire in blackface, and he was doing it
right beforehand. You see him putting it on, right?
Well, you see him putting it on because Bojangles of Harlem, who was like broadly considered to be possibly the greatest tap dancer who ever lived. He died. He'd been a huge influence, and Fred Astaire was doing that. Like in Fred Astaire's head,
he sings about him.
Yeah. It's basically this like tribute to this person who essentially molded a huge portion of Fred Astaire's life. You look at it now; it's horribly offensive.
Well,
and at the time, though, it would have been seen as this loving tribute.
So when I watched it, with a couple of friends, one of them being the one that introduced me to Ozu. So we watched this, and we concluded there's no bigger downer in a fun movie than suddenly seeing somebody put on blackface. Seeing the star putting on black, Well,
that's like my favorite Buster Keaton movies. There's always like the one random guy in blackface there to ruin the party.
I was like, no, why did you have to? But yeah. At the time, it was a big tribute to Bojangles.
Yeah, it would have been. I mean, honestly, that would have offended people in the South more than say seeing Step and Fetch It, if I had to guess, because it was showing him as an important person who'd contributed to society.
Yeah.
In the unfortunate Hollywood vernacular of the, like, I don't think Fred Astaire was a racist, or he wasn't. He was a product of a racist period, but I feel like if you're going to go after racists in the 1930s, like, Fred Astaire is like way low on the list.
It was the sort of the par for the course racism. Well, no, I can't even put it that way.
I mean, it would have been seen as sort of like until, I mean, even now, like if you say to somebody, I got gypped.
I don't use that word.
Right. And that's because people realized, oh shit, this is horribly offensive.
Right. To gypsies, in case that's
to gypsies, right. If you're really late to the party on that, yeah.
Right. And what you'd really be saying is Romani.
Yeah, like,
which has nothing to do with Romania, but
like in the 90s, I had to explain to my dad what calling a spade came from, even, because he just sort of assumed it was just like a thing he heard people say at some point is a vernacular colloquialism.
I really thought it was a reference to gardening.
That's what I thought when I was a kid. Yeah, because nobody's used that as a racial slur directly in a very long time, thank God.
Right. I'm not saying, oh, you know what? Well, we should use it because it's really now about the gardening tools. It
never was about the gardening tools. But
and let's not pretend that now it can be.
The naivete about it is a weird indicator of some kind of progress.
Well, okay, maybe it's an indicator in progress, is it didn't occur to us that the racist, or okay, let's start by saying it, the racial component didn't come into play. So not even, and the racial component is racist.
Right.
Because of the specific terminology that it uses and the way it, and the people, that it is using, for other purposes. But the more progressive thing is that we didn't realize it never occurred to us that it had anything to do with a racist term, and we just thought it was, it's a neutral thing. It's a garden implement.
Right. And you don't have the kind of, whereas like somebody saying that in the 30s, they would have known full well that's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
It would be like saying I got Jewed out of some money or something, right? Like, and while we're speaking about racism, this actually...
While we're speaking about being Jewed.
Right, while we're speaking about racism, that actually makes for a very natural segue into the Super Friends episode today, which I gotta say is like the most fucked up Super Friends episode I've ever seen, like when you really think about it.
Yes.
You want to get the plot summary?
Well, yeah, if you actually take the plot and all the implications into account. There's others that have been fucked up, like somewhat visually, or the stories are just like the way they go off. I don't know. I keep using the phrase "off the rails," but the way they go off the rails. No, the way they.
Well, that's only offensive to trains, and they died out.
Commuter rails and subways don't count. Oh God, now I'm thinking about. I used to take the City of New Orleans. I was actually on the City of New Orleans train. The one riding on the City of New Orleans. Illinois Central, Monday morning mail. So I used to actually take that. I lived in Urbana-Champaign, and in order to go visit my parents in Detroit, I would go to Chicago, and then from there to Detroit. So I would get up like 5 o'clock in the morning to catch the 6 o'clock City of New Orleans that went through Urbana to Chicago. And I remember the second to last stop, the conductor coming down and walking across and saying, Kankakee, Kankakee, next stop, Kankakee, and Kankakee is in the song. And then we'd end up in Chicago, and I'd go to the Chicago Art Institute. Is that what it was called? Or
yeah.
Is that it?
Or no, I think is it Chicago Institute of Art?
Maybe it's
I always remember it had like a weird acronym. Yeah, CIA.
So I'd go there, I'd sit in a bench in front of a Chagall window or painting, I think, and I'd be there for 6 hours. No, I'd go to like, I don't know, McDonald's or maybe...
And then you found out that they made those things, but they moved the pictures.
The pictures. They made
the pictures move.
I went in there, asked, can I take a picture? And they said yes. So I took the Chagall. I mean, I had 6 hours. I was able to figure out a whole thing with the pulleys and hire a truck to get it onto the train. Yeah, so then I would take the train to Detroit. I have a whole story about that. But anyways, so trains. Super Friends.
Super Friends, if you want to give the
synopsis? All right, sure. So we begin with the Super Friends are trying to save a spaceship with some cute little aliens from falling into a black hole. And they save it, but Superman gets trapped. And he's
in his own cute little spaceship.
Right. He's got a cute little spaceship for some reason, but it's important that he has it because he ends up going through a space and time warp and ends up at Krypton. Now, Superman's powers don't work under the red Kryptonian sun. The reason he has his powers on Earth is because of its yellow sun. So he ends up there like not even hours before Krypton's sun expands and destroys Krypton. So he actually sees Jor-El, and Jor-El putting a baby...
Jor-El being Superman's dad, for those of you who are not Super Friends hip.
Thank you. I forgot that not everyone knows the full Superman backstory, or don't remember Marlon Brando. So that's what Marlon Brando was Jor-El.
That was like 5 Superman movies ago.
Yeah.
No, more than 5.
5? Oh, God knows how many.
There's 4 with Christopher Reeves, and then there's the one that failed in the mid 2000s, and then there's the other one that failed later, Man of Steel, and then there's Batman v Superman. So why do we keep giving Zack Snyder money? Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder.
So he ends up there. He saves. So Jor-El and Lara L are putting baby Kal-El, that's Superman, in the little ship to send him to Earth. But Superman is able to use he goes into his little spaceship, his little one-person ship, and he manages to stop the sun from expanding, which saves Krypton. He goes back to Earth through the black hole, and the Hall of Justice is destroyed. All the Super Friends are gone except for Robin, who doesn't recognize him because there is no Superman. The Legion of Doom has destroyed the Super Friends and enslaved the Earth. So Superman goes back to the space and time warp, but through the black hole.
Disregarding the fact that Superman would have to exist in 2 separate places at the same time in that timeline if he did survive on Krypton.
Right, because he must have moved on to a different timeline because he doesn't disappear. He doesn't have a Back to the Future kind of thing where he starts to fade.
Right.
He looks at the picture and he starts to disappear from the picture. Maybe because he didn't have a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
He did when he forgot to ask, "Can I take your picture?"
Right.
He goes back. He stops what he did to he threw in some antimatter to stop the sun from exploding. He ends up taking that antimatter so that the sun does engulf Krypton on the end, and he goes back to Earth, and everything's fine. In the process, committing genocide, because while he saved Krypton in the first place, saving a bunch of people who were doomed to die, he now goes and causes them to die anyway. So he holds a responsibility in the destruction of Krypton, despite him only
right. He's the one who destroyed. Yeah, like it pretty much the only the episode breaks the space-time continuum in multiple ways, just so that Superman can be the one who actually destroyed Krypton.
Yeah.
And then he gets back to Earth, and he's just like, "Hey, everybody's here!" Hey. And then it's just the credits. Like we don't even get an "It's a Wonderful Life" moment where he's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be back at the Halls of Justice" or something. It's like, "Oh yeah, I'm the one who fucking destroyed Krypton now. Don't fuck with me me, I'm Superman. Not even that. He's just sort of like he's just got this blank smile that he always has in the cartoons. It's kind of creepy in retrospect.
The blank smile. Yeah, he does always have that same blank smile.
Right, because I think they only could afford to animate him for like 3 seconds, and they reused it again and again for 14 years. But
let's see. So there's about 10 superheroes. They took, what was it, 3 minutes to animate each one? So 30 minutes of animation. Right. And then the rest is just moving the cells to the left and the right.
Right. It's
sometimes up and down.
Yeah, sometimes these look worse than the 60s Marvel cartoons, which is like a feat.
Wow. Yeah, that's a...
Well, I don't okay, maybe that's unfair. Like, nothing looks quite as
bad as
that. Like, we watched one of those, the Spider-Man one.
We watched the Spider-Man one with the aliens.
And the Spider-Man one honestly looks higher product. Like, the Captain America one, it's literally just like trying to read a comic book over somebody's shoulder with bad voiceovers.
So that's the plot of the Super Friends episode, and I already got into some of the philosophical implications. But for starters, is he plays with the timeline, he plays with history, and he sees the effect.
He sees himself as a baby, and
and
nothing happens.
Right, and actually, isn't in the DC universe, you can't be somewhere at the same time, or you can't meet yourself because it'll cause, I don't know, some massive havoc. I don't think it'll screw up the timeline. Won't it actually destroy the universe or something?
You're the guy with the complete Crisis on Infinite Earth set, so I defer to your
well, they meet each other. The people from the different universes in the multiverse meet each other. So Superman of Earth 1 meets Superman of Earth 2, meets Superboy of Earth Prime.
Right, because there's all that, because even in the ones before they gave a shit about continuity, to like Gardner Fox Justice League issues, the whole fun of having an Earth 2 is that you got to see Earth 2 Batman with Earth 1 Batman. Or why the fuck have Earth 2?
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
So that all happens. What else? Oh yeah. So what do you have to say about this? You said this was the most fucked up episode.
Well, yeah, because basically, you have these incredibly weighty moral decisions, one after another. There's at least 2 or 3 that come up there, and it's like, do I want... Oh, yeah, go for it. Do I want Superman to prefer the life of Krypton over the life of Earth? No. I mean, I'm biased in that because, I'm not living on Krypton right now, but... I mean, on the one hand, yes, the Earth looks kind of shitty when he gets back there and it's just Robin and the Legion of Doom is, run amok. At the same time, that's not quite as terrible a thing as literally destroying an entire planet and civilization.
Right.
So, if I was, if I was in a freshman philosophy course, it comes down to one of those things, you have 2 shitty decisions. Can you preference one over the other?
Right.
And then you get into those, really uncomfortable questions of utilitarianism and, quantification of human life that, a lot of the finance sector in our society is actually based around that, right? You can't have an insurance industry unless you can put an actual dollar value per human life. Which I believe, it actually changes by country, which is really fucked up. But when people in Iraq who had relatives wrongfully killed by the U.S. military would file claims, they would usually, the value that the insurance company put on them, they would get about $2,000.
A life is worth $2,000
in Iraq. If that happens in the United States, usually it depends on how much you already paid the insurance company, because that's life insurance. But I think the generally accepted number by the UN is something like 400,000.
Wow.
Really weird thing to think about, but.
It's just horrible. And it puts, gives us a really simple comparison of how people, I want to say how people value life. Not that the individuals, how they value their own lives, but how other people evaluate the other.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the weird thing is, though, if you didn't have that number attached, they wouldn't get any money. If there wasn't, a set standard in the industry that they could be held to. So that's even more fucked up. And anyway, but by that standard, Superman made the wrong choice in this episode. He should have saved Krypton, left it there, left the Earth to deal with its own problems.
Right. Well, let's say that they both have the same population, and we're going back to the 70s. I don't know, let's say 5 billion.
Yeah.
So each planet has 5 billion people. So do you end up with 5 billion people dead and 5 billion people free? That's if you destroy Krypton and let Earth live. Or do you end up with 5 billion people, the people who would otherwise have died, the 5 billion are free, and then the other 5 billion who would have been free are enslaved.
By the Legion of Doom.
By the Legion of Doom. So you've either got 5 billion people who are free, or 10 billion people, half of whom are free and half of whom are enslaved.
Right, and that brings into question, like, how do we value life qualitatively versus quantitatively versus, man, I wasn't expecting the, like, deep, like, uncomfortable discussion in this episode to be the Super Friends portion.
No, you think that the movie was, but I guess, we pick a movie called Hellzapoppin.
Right, Hellzapoppin.
With apostrophe and exclamation mark.
Right, it's supposed to be a light entertainment. And somehow, even then, we ended up talking about, like race stuff for a while. But that's why you all tune in, right? Because you're not really sure where this podcast is ever going to go.
Yeah, neither are we. I mean, we got to the point where I said that Leo McCarey played number 2 in The Prisoner, so you know that's how far off it went.
Because
not only
as soon as we finish recording, Ron's going into a black hole to make sure that happens.
That Leo McCarey becomes number 2 in The Prisoner. Yeah, that's right. Which is to have. I'm going to make Leo McCarey and Leo McCurran the same person. That's what I'm going to do when I go into my black hole, into my space and time warp.
But even that, like, okay, here's a lighter question. Why the fuck does Superman need a spaceship? He's Superman. He can fly in, like, there's been multiple storylines about him flying through space really quickly to reverse time.
Yeah,
like,
he probably could have gone faster on his own than using that ship.
Like, does the ship, and the thing is, it's such a dinky looking, I mean, we know why the spaceship exists because they thought maybe we could make a toy out of this. Like, let's not kid ourselves, but... No, the spaceship exists because he needs it. It's the vehicle. It's the prop that's needed in when he goes to Krypton, because he can't rely on his own powers. So we need something in the story that lets him go into the sun. But that still makes no sense because he has no knowledge beforehand that he's going to end up on Krypton. They create a plot hole by fixing a plot hole. But granted,
the writers needed something. So this is Chekhov's gun, right?
Right.
So the spaceship that appears, like, why is Superman in a spaceship? Well, a spaceship and Superman. There's Chekhov's spaceship. And then later on, Superman's on his own. He's going around. He tries to advocate for Jor-El. And then he sees the little baby, goes back to Earth and says, "Oh no, what happened?" Goes back to Krypton. And then Chekhov's spaceship reappears, in which he uses it to go into the sun because he can't. He can't go into the big red sun.
I mean, also, like, if you're Superman, can't you get, like, you have a giant fortress made out of ice with, like, way cooler crap than I will ever stuff, any domicile with? He's got, like...
I don't know. You come pretty close.
Well, thank you. But, and he's driving around. I mean, it looks like at one point he calls it a supermobile, which seemed like the big tell, because the only reason you call that instead of a supermobile is there was I don't even know if the company exists at that point, though. There's the Playmobil.
Yeah,
toy
Playmobil.
Company. Yeah. Right. Oh, wait, no, it's pronounced Playmobil?
Well, that's the way I had it growing up, but I was also in Israel at the time.
Oh, okay.
So it was Playmobil. I was, but I knew in English it was Playmobil, but it might be Playmobil. Yeah. Anyways, we can always look that up.
That might be conspiracy thingy, but it has...
Siri, pronounce P-L-A-Y.
There's a thing that looks like a Viewmaster. Like, you remember the Viewmaster toys with the slides? And that's the only navigation system in this spaceship?
Yeah.
Like, how is this better than just flying?
Yeah, you could just stare out the window. Yeah. All right, so Chekhov's spaceship. What else?
It's powered by Superman's heat farts.
Let's see. Any other philosophical questions or other...
What else?
How do we put fucked up shit?
Fucked up shit. Yeah, there's a lot of fucked up shit in it. Well, did we say the name of the episode yet? Because I don't know if we did.
The Krypton something.
The Krypton syndrome, which is apparently like a euphemism for when you kill. Oh, okay. So there's the Freud aspect, right? He has to kill his parents in order to exist as himself as he knows it as an adult.
Whoa. Yeah, that's right. He's not only destroying the planet, he's killing his parents. Wow. He's killing
and also,
his parents.
like, in the sense that you're, like, birthed out of a society, like, any metaphorical sense you want to take the Freud stuff, he does it. And he seems to feel very relieved afterward.
No, this is still blowing my mind that he kills his parents in order to live.
Not even to live, though, because he was fine. And
yeah, that's right. He was alive.
Any of those things, he's fine. Like, Batman might have gotten killed by the Legion of Doom or something. Maybe it's like about him.
He's so selfless. He has the selflessness and helping others is just part of his personal mythology or his notion of self that he'd rather kill his parents than not help someone. So he kills his parents so that he can help all the people on Earth. And there's something pathological there.
That makes him seem like Earth's stooge. And granted, I think one of the most unexplored aspects of Superman is, like, how does a man who literally doesn't physically feel pain conceive of death and things like that? Because he has to have some really weird psychological constructs built up to kind of confront that. Because there were some of those, like, revisionist 80s, like, the major one I'm thinking about is Martial Law by Pat Mills and Kevin O'Neill, but I guess that's the major one. But you have this in that particular series of comics, you have this world in the future. The government has essentially created superheroes to fight in Vietnam. They do this by giving these people, like, weird mutations, super strength, and then cutting off any kind of neurological capability to feel physical pain or discomfort. And the end result is that very similar to, like, people, like, because that's an actual thing. Like, you can, like, usually people don't live very long when they have this because they just kind of go on like thrill seeking. They express a lot of, like, very dangerous parasuicidal thrill seeking behavior because they don't feel this thing. Like, they don't, in the most literal sense, like, if you're a baby and you can put your hand on the stove and you don't feel anything,
you're going to keep your hand on the stove.
Right, and that's not going to end well. Yeah. I think they even use that as a plot point in one of the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies. But
what does that have to do with Superman?
Well, Superman is a guy who does not feel physical pain in any sense.
Okay.
We feel it, so...
No. He has kryptonite, and when he has kryptonite, he feels it, so he's not indestructible. It's just that he has to be in a certain position, and he's also not invincible, at least...
not after 1986.
Right. Before that, he's invincible, yeah. Although he kneels before Zod.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? We all kneel before Zod. No, but the only time he kneels before him is when he's actually switched. He's done the reverse thing in the Fortress of Solitude, so that he's actually superpowered and Zod is not.
Right.
Anyway, wow. Okay. So now going to that's not even. Is that the first? That's the second Superman movie. Yeah. That's Superman 2.
Right. That's like the good one. Well, the first one's decent.
Oh, you don't care for it much? Or?
I like it.
Oh, okay.
It's not Citizen Kane or something, but it does what it sets out to do. The fourth one's the one that's supposedly like dog shit. Right?
Oh, that's horrible. Superman. Yeah, the Quest for Peace is just.
I never
miserable.
Saw that one.
Margot Kidder was on, I think it was Letterman, and Letterman asked her, "So is it a good movie?" And she paused. But speaking of Citizen Kane, back to Hellzapoppin. So we always spoil movies on here. Hellzapoppin is pretty spoiler-proof, but they spoil Citizen Kane. I think we mentioned that
3 months after it came out, which is like, I'm not even mad, bro. That's impressive. Like,
yeah. How did you manage?
They walk through. For those of you who have not seen Citizen Kane, just like skip the next 30 seconds because I'm going to give away the ending.
Cover your ears and count 30 Mississippis.
Right. Go to your own private Xanadu for a couple seconds.
You know what? I'm going to time this.
Okay.
So we have 30 seconds for the spoiler, and then we have to stop.
Okay.
All right. Ready, set, stopwatch. Okay. Ready, set, and cover your ears.
Okay. So in the movie Hellzapoppin, there's a sequence that we mentioned previously in the podcast where they go through a bunch of different sets. One of them is like an Antarctic ice land set, and there's a sled hanging, and it says Rosebud in giant letters on it. 3 months after Citizen Citizen Kane was in theaters, which...
And the spoiler being that the whole movie is about finding out what Rosebud is, because that's the last thing Citizen Kane said when he dies, and it turns out Rosebud is a sled. And there, 30 seconds. Wow, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, all right, we just spoiled Citizen Kane. So, okay, after all these years, and we say we just spoiled Citizen Kane, and everybody knows blah, 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 blah without saying it.
No, the actual ending is Citizen Kane. It turns out that
Citizen Kane was Superman.
Well, the Brad Pitt and the Edward Norton characters are the same person at the end of Citizen Kane.
Oh my God, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, and Orson Welles comes out and gives him a big party.
Right, and then it also turns out that like the lady in the movie the whole time actually has a dick. That was a crying game.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that movie. I'm trying to remember the music from the Crying Game now. But yes.
I guess I don't feel bad about spoiling the Crying Game. I do feel bad about spoiling Citizen Kane if you just like you haven't been watching movies all the time.
So I wrote a short story. So this was in a writing class, and I wrote a short story, and I made what I thought was I made a reference to Citizen Kane, and I was worried that it was too obvious. Nobody said anything about it. So I was emailing with my instructor, and I said something. Yeah, by the way, I was so worried that this was that blankety blank was too obvious as a reference to Citizen Kane. And she said, "Wait, that was a reference? I don't know it." It's like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, I've never seen the movie. So not only has she not seen the movie, she also didn't know about the reference that we see in so much popular culture.
Oh yeah, the Rosebud thing, that's been like everywhere for going on 80 years now.
Yeah, excuse me. Maybe I need some more of that vinegar.
That might be the most famous spoiler in movies, period.
Yeah, but I guess if you reach a certain point in which people haven't been watching Citizen Kane, so you get few and fewer people who are familiar with it, and so they don't know what the joke is a reference to, so they don't realize that it's a joke.
Part of that might be the increasing dominance of I feel like TV has a much higher position in the culture than movies do now.
Yeah.
And that can...
So you might recognize a Breaking Bad reference, or even like, wow, that's a major Breaking Bad spoiler. But if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, like me, you would one, not get the joke, and two, you might not even realize that there was a joke there to begin with. If somebody just says...
The Heisenberg uncertainty principle of... cultural references, which doubles as an explanation and as a Breaking Bad spoiler.
Oh, Heisenberg, because that's his name, right?
Yeah, that's his street name.
Yeah, okay, all right. Which is
like his MC name,
because you can never figure out who he is if you find him, or if you see him, you don't know where he is because he's already moved on. I don't know if that's.
Well, I think it's just because Heisenberg was a scientist and he wanted to, because he still thinks of himself as a scientist instead of a meth dealer, even though he's totally a meth dealer.
He's a meth dealer with a science background.
Yeah, so I'm almost done watching The Sopranos. They have one season left. Breaking Bad stole literally everything from that goddamn show. Like I love Breaking Bad when it was on, but as I go through The Sopranos, it's just there's still there's some great surreal imagery and stuff, and there are some differences between them, but the basic premise of both shows is almost identical. The preoccupations, Breaking Bad is basically, it's The Sopranos if Tony didn't have parents, and they never reference anybody having parents.
Okay. But isn't, in Breaking Bad, his wife and son?
Well, I mean, he does have a kid, but Walter White himself, we never hear about him having parents or...
No, I know. No, I'm just trying to do the comparison.
We presume that they came out of somewhere, but
Yeah. No, but his family, Walter White's family doesn't know that he's a meth dealer, right? Or do they?
Not until the very, 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 very end.
Okay, all right. So for everyone who hasn't watched Breaking Bad and wants to,
I just spoiled the whole thing. Yeah.
But in Sopranos, the family knows what's going on, right?
The wife does, and the wife doesn't. I don't know. I don't get the sense that Carmela.
Does she have blinders on?
She knows where the money's coming from. She knows that he's a mobster. I don't think she really gets the full extent of what, because he's still hiding it, right? Because he's like banging every chick left and right,
right,
killing people. Like he's not going home and telling Carmela like, oh, I just garroted a guy and then chopped him up and buried him in the woods or something. And the kids, like Meadow, sort of, I get the sense that she kind of gets it, right? Because they're like in the first season, she shows Anthony Jr. that website with the mobsters and is like, hey, Dad's not really in waste management. But then later in the show, she gets her like college grad school boyfriend, and then Tony hooks him up with a job, and he sees it's a great episode in the 5th season, but it's not really a spoiler that, this happens so many times on the show, but he's on the construction site, somebody gets into an argument, somebody smashes a bottle in somebody else's face. He's like, his parents are photographers in California, he's horrified, and then he goes to Meadow and he's like, he doesn't feel safe saying literally what he saw, but he's just like, I don't feel safe around these people anymore, I'm going back to San Francisco. She's like, no, that guy's so sweet, he's been over to the house so many times. And meanwhile, we've literally just seen this guy like break a fucking beer bottle in somebody's face because he said the wrong thing about a baseball game.
So Tony Soprano's family is, and I'm not going to go any further with this analogy because it is so inappropriate.
Tony Soprano's family is the American public during the Iraq War. Like, they don't want to look, they know some kind of, they don't want to see how the sausage gets made, but the show itself literally makes parallels between that towards the end.
Mine was Germans during World War II trying to imagine that the Jews were just being sent to summer camp.
Right. Like, nobody wants, there's
no, things aren't that bad.
Yeah, because I feel like Breaking Bad, it doesn't represent denial as being as much of a multi-tiered thing.
He's very good at hiding it.
He's very good at hiding it, but the people around him don't really, like, his wife is kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? And when his kid finds out, he's, like, morally aghast. Whereas on The Sopranos, it's sort of like,
it's the life they know.
Yeah, like Meadow knows that he's a mobster, but she doesn't think about the fact that, this means that he's like out killing people or like throwing, beating people with random objects whenever he has a temper tantrum.
Well, this is we've really moved far from this really like funny kind of jump all around, ultimately meaningless movie from the 30s.
Yeah, to Americans' buried guilt about Iraq.
Yeah, wow.
Anyway, that seems like a good place to.
Yeah. Any more thoughts about Hellzapoppin and Leo McCarey?
For any of you,
had nothing to do with this.
Yeah, Leo McCarey directed Duck Soup. If there's anything that kind of anticipates Hellzapoppin, it is like the Marx Brothers stuff, because Duck Soup was before Hellzapoppin. I'm pretty sure Duck Soup is like 1935, 1936.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, Leo McCarey does have something to do with Hellzapoppin. There's no other movie quite like this, even though there's echoes of it in literally dozens of other things. And also it's in the public domain, so you can see it for free right now. That's how we did it. And it's funny, it's goofy. If you feel depressed after our weighty discussion about Superman committing genocide against his own people, pop in Hellzapoppin.
Yeah. And these are two very different stories. So you get very different feelings out of each one. Although, Hellzapoppin was fun. It was a lot of fun, and it was, and the great dancing. But it's really great the way they play with movies. And again, I'll say breaking the fourth wall.
It's maybe still even the funny. There aren't a lot of 80-year-old things where like I'm actually like gut laughing.
Yeah.
Did. And he moves quick and it's
very fast. And we get to see Martha Raye, which is neat. Oh yeah, I was wondering. Okay, that was my thing. I was wondering about Martha Raye and how big of a star she was. She got top billing, or at least when they had the card with all the actors, they had her name at the top in much bigger font, and then the rest. And Martha Raye is funny. And Martha Raye is, she's the triple threat. She can dance, she can sing, she can act. And we see it here. But she's also, she would never play the ingenue, at least the way we look at it here. There's the love interest, who's sort of very sweet and dainty and petite. And she's not nearly as interesting as Martha Raye.
Oh, she's fucking
who's still
boring.
sexy.
Yeah.
Right? So,
well, yeah, Martha Raye, I think, like, she's allowed to be... I feel like in a lot of those early movies, there's, like, kind of the woman who seems approachable, who the audience, like, if you're a kid in the audience, that's the person you'd sort of have a crush on. And then there's, like, just the woman who sort of exists as reification of arbitrary historical beauty standards over and over. Like, we're at a young place that in a lot of movies, and they're usually boring.
Yeah, she was boring. she was not interested. Even like, during the dance number with the Spanish song,
she's going to sell a lot more dresses than Martha Raye is, but like Martha Raye is
much more interesting and enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
Martha Raye is the one you want to hang out with, and maybe make love to her, but you definitely want to hang out with her. And even when they have the Spanish dance sequence, the first woman, the quote unquote traditional standards of beauty woman with who's boring, she's singing and she has a little bit of the fruit thing on her head, but then Martha Raye comes in and she also has one, and there's something about her. She takes over the show. She's the standout, and she's also the comic actress. She walks around. She's a little stockier, walks a little. I said mannish. I mean, for lack of a better term, and I realize that there's big sexist component to what I just said.
She's like she could have been in German opera if we're playing entirely on physicality stereotypes.
I don't know. She might have been a little small for that.
Oh, maybe that's true. Yeah, she was
somewhere between.
2/3 Brunhilde.
Yeah. 2/3 Brunhilde, 1/3 ingenue.
Right.
She's like. So I'm just wondering how big of the star. I don't know much, and really, I knew Martha Raye I first knew her when she was older and was doing denture commercials, because she's got this really big, distinctive mouth.
Right.
And that's the thing that you really know it's Martha Raye if you see that mouth. And I think that's had to do with the nickname of hers. I don't remember. I'll have to look.
I didn't know she existed until we watched this movie. I saw the movie when I was in college, but I did not remember most of it because I saw it on a tiny laptop.
And that name Martha Raye meant nothing to you?
Meant nothing to me. I was like, okay, a lot of fourth wall stuff. I was watching like 3 movies a day at that point, so I think like I was in that mode when you're like really tired when you're driving and the lines are just kind of going past you, and you're like, shit, where did those exits go? Like,
what I really like about
crash the car.
What I really like this is that you're watching TV or you're watching a movie while driving a car. Is that what you're saying?
No. I was. Anyway, I gotta go walk a dog.
Yeah. Oh, you really do now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got today.
All right. That's Dan's work.
That's what keeps me watching movies. Yeah. So.
Excuse me. All right. So I guess that's it for Hellzapoppin. And the Super Friends.
And the Super Friends.
Well, we'll talk to
that's not it for the Super Friends. It's still like 200, 300 Super Friends.
Hellzapoppin, on the other hand, I don't think there's a remake in the work anytime soon.
No remake, no reboot, no sequel.
Jane, Silent Bob, Hellzapoppin reboot.
I would actually love to see a Kevin Smith remake of that movie. I feel like he could do something very interesting with that.
But if he kept all those scenes in there, the movie would be 10 hours long because he'd have everyone speak a monologue.
Actually, I didn't even think of it. Yeah, okay, so that would be Kevin Smith's Satan Tango. Right. Anyway, so this is Dan.
And this is Ron.
And this has been a nominee.
All right, see y'all. Check you out next time.
Later.